This is Synchronicity.
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 Welcome to Synchronicity. We have a guest this week. How about that? And not just a guest, but a regular guest. We're going to have S.J. Anderson on, an astrologer. He's been on, I don't know, a couple of months ago, maybe a little bit more. Big fan of S.J. And you will be too if you haven't heard him. You'll hear in this episode why. Dude is on the path, man. Like, he gets it. He's fucking understanding this. He brings a wonderfully rejuvenating masculine power, stoic, but deeply rich in love and compassion and the divine feminine too. And like, that's what we need in this world. We need men and women balancing the energies within themselves, finding a modality that works for them. In this case, it's astrology for SJ, and really bringing that into the world to help people. Give them some perspective and some control over their lives and their thoughts and their minds, which is essential. Like, we have to do that now, and we will do it. So we're going to make these regular things. I think we're probably going to do it every 28 days and focus on the lunar cycle. So stay tuned for that. And I'll probably be doing some other astrology-based stuff just because it's fucking cool and it works. And we talk a little bit about why it works and some of why I think it works. And it has to do with imagination, but it has to do with stable imaginal acts. And astrology has been around for a very long time. And the influence of the planets has been a felt and experienced thing in this reality for millennia. So if not forever. So it's a pretty powerful tool that can be used. So big thanks to everyone who is sending in their imaginal acts and really sharing a part of themselves. I've gotten a tremendous amount of feedback. That's a silly thing to say. I've gotten a tremendous amount of feedback from the podcasts I did with Ramin on Rainbow Brain Skull and Corey on The Astral Hustle. I also have another one coming out soon with Jessica Ann, The Art of Humanity. She's going to be joining MindPod Network as well. That's a good one. And there's going to be other ones I don't even know about. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on. I appreciate the ratings and the reviews. I really love those reviews. Can I say that? I really love the reviews. They make me feel good. I really appreciate those. And for people who have been signing up to the list, I haven't been mentioning it, but it's been blowing up. Like, I guess you guys are going to the website, syncpodcast.com, and seeing it somewhere. I think there's a pop-up maybe I put up a couple of months ago. But anyway, I'm glad you're digging it. We're giving away some free resources about Neville Goddard in there, talking about imagination. And I just added, it's the only place you can find it. You can't find it on the website. I just added a donations request for Synchronicity. And here's why. I'm not hurting for funds right now. Listen, who doesn't want more money? But it's coming. I know that. I'm not really worried about it. But what I do want to do is kind of create this feedback loop for Synchronicity where if I need a new microphone, or I think a new microphone will improve the quality of the show, or I want to get video editing done for an upcoming project that I'm working on, a pretty cool podcast thing. It's coming up. You're gonna dig it. Travel costs associated with that, production costs. We're going to be kicking this stuff up a notch, and I would love for it to be kind of a self-contained feedback loop of money going on here. So if you're able to donate, I will probably expand the ways that you can do that in the future, but this is really for only the people who have the means and are able to right now. If you sign up for the email list, the Imagination email list on syncpodcast.com, somewhere down the line, you'll be prompted for a donation. And if you don't have it, don't worry. It's no big deal. You can still sign up. But if you do have it and you're able to, that would be awesome. I'm also looking for talented, creative, amazing people to help me out over the next year. I have a lot of things that I'm going to be working on. And these are things I'm definitely doing. I mentioned the secret podcast project. That's going to be primarily in New York City and the New York City. That's a fun way to say it. New York City and Los Angeles. So I'll be back and forth between those cities a lot this year. And then we're probably going to expand it to some other global cities. So stay tuned for that. I'm also going to be recording an album. I am recording an album. I'm not saying I'm going to be. I have songs done. I'm working on a lot of stuff for my first full-length album. Shit's coming along nice. And I'm going to be singing on it. What the fuck? Never thought I'd do that. But my voice is actually pretty good, I realized. So that's going on. I also just have other familial obligations that will be going on. But in terms of creative projects, those are two focal points for me. And we also have MindPod Network going on. So I have a lot of shit going on. I am being very wary not to overextend myself. But this is all to say that if you can help out donation-wise with Synchronicity, some of these costs, I want to get some Neumann mics eventually. I want to do cool stuff. Feel free to come and help. I am not too big, too proud to say, if you want to donate, go ahead. There is a Patreon for people who are asking. Don't use the Patreon. I'm in the process of shutting it down. If you've signed up recently, feel free to cancel your membership. I'm going to send out a thing. Here's why. Patreon takes 10% of everything that's donated. That's bullshit. Like, what if someone on Patreon was making like $50,000 a month? They're going to take $5,000 right off the top just because you can post things? That's not cool. Well, obviously, I'll be, there's free stuff now that if you want to sign up for, you can have it on the email list and all of that. And I know I'm talking about this shit a lot, but I'm trying to flesh it out in a nice way. So if you go and sign up there, you can donate directly through PayPal. Other ways, if you want Bitcoin, I take Bitcoin. But yeah, we're going to create basically a self-contained system that's going to be pretty fucking cool. And I would really appreciate your help. And if there's anything I can do for you, please let me know. I would love to. If you need me to imagine you having a lot of money so you can donate $20 to Synchronicity, you got it. You just got to ask. Okie dokie. That's it. And let's get to this episode. It's an astrological journey into yourself. Without further ado, here is S.J. Anderson, recorded August 11th, 2019.
Thanks for coming on. We're just gonna cut with the formalities and everything because I think we're gonna do this somewhat regularly. I was also pointing out to a friend last night that we need to start doing everything on the lunar cycle because it's literally like I've known this for a while, but the moon, I know that people used to use the moon as our calendar and then we switched to the solar and there's a whole patriarchal thing embedded in that, but it's just, I've noticed that if you start things on new moons and use the moon as kind of like a quarterly guide to what's going on, it's just very good. So we're going to do this pretty regularly. But why don't you explain what we're doing here? I know I just hit you up like 2 days ago to talk about this, but what's your vision for what we're doing here with these talks?
Yeah, so I mean, there's different ways this is done, like in the astrology community. People will talk about the astrology and different increments of time. So one common way, like you're saying, is people will say, here's my lunation, and that would be the new moon. Here's my lunation analysis for the next 30 days until the next new moon, or 28 days. And they talk about all of the aspects the moon makes and, analyze it. And then that people will, either sell that to their clients, like this other astrologer. I won't mention names, just that way. But, and so people can buy like a workshop and analyze that lunation cycle. Others do it like maybe a more weekly check-in, and they base it on dates, for example. So there's popular podcasts where it's the first of the month. They will release a astrology for June or astrology for July.
Right.
It seem to be tied to, like I said, like you were saying, the lunation cycle, but it's more about this solar calendar that we're all embedded in.
Right.
I think that there's other astrologers that'll come on podcasts and say, here's like the 6 months ahead or the yearly forecast. So kind of their regularity is a little less, So
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of ways you can do it. I mean, when people talk about astrology, I think that most of the best astrologers I've heard try to just talk about things in terms of humanity, let's say, something that anybody could find useful,
Right.
as opposed to nerding out on astrology. Because
Yes.
because we could do that, I could do that and get highly technical, but most people probably don't understand that. Um, so, my vision is just to kind of talk about energies, talk about collective energies, talk about things that are happening, maybe personal anecdotes, and try to keep the astrology technical side, at least, introduce it, but keep it to a minimum. And that way people can enjoy the dialogue, no matter what level knowledge they are with astrology. So.
Well, and I mean, I'm so happy you said all of that. It confirms why I hit you up, dude. I mean, the thing is for me, like, I now understand far more about astrology than I did since the last time we spoke. Like, I remember every astrologer I would speak to, I was like, I, I like it. I get that there's something to it, but I don't understand it. Now I've gotten like sucked into the vortex and like looking at my chart, understand my natal, understand the signs, learning this like the graphics for the signs. Like I'm in the vortex.
Cool.
But what I like about what you're saying is there is this universal power of astrology that you don't have to understand the technicals to, like, you don't have to go and look and see Jupiter or Saturn and intuitively know what that means. But if someone explains to you that these planets have these effects and you notice that this period had been going on, like for me, the easiest thing, and I think a lot of people will be able to relate to this, was eclipse season, right? From the beginning of July to the beginning of August was the craziest fucking time of my entire life. My birthday happened to be in the middle there. But dude, when I say, I mean, I don't even know how to describe it. There's no words for describing the calamity and enlightening aspects all embedded into this turbulent period. And I knew eclipse season was coming, and I said to my wife, like, "Oh, watch out, eclipse season." I was just kind of like joking. I didn't know. Holy shit! So we all have these and are under the influence of these planets, and just movements of the cosmos all of the time. And I think that is what appeals to me most about it. And that's why I just knew in our conversation before that this is how you approach it. And I see your tweets, and I see, yeah, I mean, it's like anything in the world. Astrology could be anything to anyone, and it is. But if you kind of really get to the mysticism of it, right? The mysticism of astrology, oh my God, it's the best. So, with that said, where do we start, man? What's going on? why are the planets doing this to us?
Well, I think we can start just where you started, because that is, I think, what at least most people or a lot of us are dealing with is the we're on the other side of some of the most difficult astrology that we've had in some time. I mean, this summer was quite difficult for most folks. I mean, more difficult for certain placement. In astrology we say placements, and would be planets in a sign. And so, not to get too technical, but those who had cardinal placements, and maybe even more specifically, Cancer and Capricorn planets in those two signs, or in Libra and Aries, might have had a quite difficult time, and because it just wasn't the eclipses. It was that Saturn is in Capricorn, and Mars was in Cancer. And so those are the two malefic planets that we at least are termed malefic planets traditionally, and they're planets that can bring difficulty. Those joined the party during eclipse season and played a really significant role. And so it was this added tension that came, into most people's lives. I mean, I had a rough time. I think it's a good thing to point out is that a rough time doesn't mean like bad results. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything like that. It just means that we have this kind of pressure or tension that comes with life, right? We're people in collision with other people. That's what life is. We're incarnated in a physical body in this density, this dense form. And I don't think there's any way of escaping this part of our imaginal reality, of our existence, that there's this physicality, and that necessitates tension. And
And there's a
so,
function. There's a function to it as well, right? I mean, that's an important thing we don't want to overlook, because I think when you get in, we were talking a little bit about the imaginal stuff, is there's a tendency to get like, oh, well, that's the real reality. This is an after effect, so it's not as important, which is a misapprehension. We're here for a reason. As best as I can tell, that reason is for us to get familiar with the concept of imagination and creating our reality from that level. And the luxury we get here, and sometimes it feels like a curse, is there's this slow dimension of time that only moves forward for us in physical reality. So if we imagine some horrible shit, it doesn't immediately happen like it would in our imaginal reality if we didn't have bodies. So we look at that as a frustrating thing if we want something and we imagine it and it doesn't happen, but it's actually like it's a nice little system for learning how this shit works. And physicality is made to bring us into this world to understand that there's impacts and everything. And I also really like what you said, quote unquote negative stuff, right? Tension. I mean, what I would describe the eclipse period like for me was a nosedive. Like I'm in a plane and I am just straight nosediving it, and it looks like imminent crash is definitely going to happen. There's no way it's not going to happen. Weirdly, I'm pleasantly calm through like very challenging, objectively challenging circumstances. Dad had a heart attack, infant was in the hospital, relationship issues, just like crazy shit. But what ended up happening right at the end of the eclipse is it was just an aerial stunt. I was just fucking doing a barrel roll and fucking doing a nosedive and pulling out of it. And it's like, if you understand internally and can use something like astrology as a modality to understand externally what's going on, you don't get caught up. It's like if you pull an inauspicious I Ching drawing, a pictograph, and you read through the thing, at first it's going to be like, you're fucked. All these things are bad, all these bad. But if you keep reading and understand to the end, they're usually like, this is actually one of the most auspicious things if you know how to navigate it. So it's important that you said, like, it's not a bad thing that's happening anyway. It's just this tension, which can create diamonds under pressure, right? So yeah, totally, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can form character. It's like, let's say I realize the next week could be rough. How do I respond to that with my thoughts and with my vision, my internal vision? And, I think there is something to be said. There's a nobility in something like courage and toughness and walking into something calmly and practicing like one's ability to stay centered with I think of it as a divine spark, in my cosmology, my spiritual kind of worldview. I do think there's divinity and divine energies, and we can center with that as we go into anything, right? And so I think that what you said, there's that, and then on the other hand, there's what you said, that knowing that when we're in difficult times, that there is planetary alignments that may be contributing to that, there is a sense of relief. I find, not only because that there's these other contributing factors, but two, they're going to end, and you can map when they will end. I mean, like for a lot of us, when Mars left Cancer and entered Leo, that was a big relief, and then that second eclipse finished. I think it was the lunar eclipse second, when that finished, and then the sun moved out into Leo, and I mean, the energy's kind of settled. I think a lot of us have felt that.
It was insane. It was insane. Like people can hear this and they'll be like, yeah, well, it was like you look at astrology, so you knew it was happening. Here's the thing. At that point, I didn't conceptually and intellectually understand astrology enough to prime myself for an energetic shift, but I can tell you. So here's my astrological sense. But yeah, there was a definite shift. Here's what I told this to my friend Juliana, and she had, astrologers react differently to this depending on their conception of themselves and just their entire world cosmology. Stable imaginal acts create reality. Astrology is one of the most stable imaginal acts because it's one of the most ancient tools for understanding ourselves and the world out there. However, everything in this world, including karma, anything, is malleable. You can step outside of it. Karma, people think of it as this endless cycle that can't be broken, but you can break karma. That's the point of it almost, is you break these kind of karmic debts. So you can always step out of this stuff. Astrology is just your blueprint, right? My conception of what astrology is it literally is you playing out you. However, just like if you take some LSD, it's a placebo, but it's a stable imaginal act placebo. So that shit's definitely going to work over and over again. astrology seems to be one of the most stable imaginal acts that I have encountered in terms of its efficiency and accuracy for being a blueprint for what's going on. And I think what we're talking about proves that. We may have some knowledge that there's something going on astrologically and there should be a shift, but that's only one aspect of understanding something. When you feel it and all of a sudden you're just like, whoa, what the hell is that? Or if that happens and then you go and look after and say, oh, that happened, like that's powerful stuff that I think if people knew really what the fuck was going on with this stuff, like, man, it's just one of the best tools I've ever found in life. It's so cool, man. It's so cool.
Yeah, and you know, I think the one thing I wanted to say too, and that you're talking about here, is that if we set all techniques of divination aside, set all religious belief systems or spiritual systems, set all that aside, we still have to have tools for life, right? Every person is confronted with challenges and has to figure out how they're going to manage in life, right? And I think that I like to think about someone's problems or my problems or what I'm going through just with that hat on only sometimes. I mean, I'm not saying for me, actually, I'm quite embedded in divination and spirituality.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah,
really?
yeah. So I usually don't, for me, I don't need to, it can be useful to think like, if I have a money problem, the issue is how am I going to get to the bank and make the deposit, or how can I make sure this transfer went through? I mean, there is practical skills that don't depend on divination that are relevant for me to solve certain problems. And I don't think that can be understated, because like if someone comes to me and says, hey, what does the astrology say about my marriage or this physical problem I have, I'll probably say, go to the specialist that can help you deal with your knee ligament problem. Like the astrology might speak to that somewhat, but there's tangible action in the physical reality that you need to do, or I would suggest you could do as an astrologer or not, just as a human being. And so, I guess it's important for me to stay grounded in things independent of the divination. But what's so cool is that when you bring the divination into it, you have even more information about this flow of reality, so that those choices can be better made, those tangible physical choices.
Yes.
So that's one thing. The other thing I think is the collective imaginal. I think is quite important, and I don't know how much you've thought about this, but I mean, we are living in a shared brain, whether that's the internet or even just the way language, like we share a language, so we have the same words, the same signifiers for words. Pre-internet, we all read the same newspapers. We saw the same 3 channels at night, the Cronkites and the Rathers. Now we have the internet, so we have the same memes and the same tweets. And, so there is this collective imaginal that I think can be a challenge when you're trying to work on your individual development, because you have to confront these energies that are pressuring you and that are kind of interfacing with your own vision, right? And so I just think that can be difficult for people. And I just want to encourage people, like, you can, at least for me, I mean, I hope to find my own authenticity in spite of that, and just acknowledge that these collective energies are part of this process,
Yes. I have thought about this an incredible amount, my friend, because it is something that experientially in this world is not arguably is the most important aspect of it, right? The relationships we have, whether it's to a person, an event, a circumstance, nature, it's irrelevant. I mean, that's what this is. My conception of what's going on at this point is, while there is this collective, it's undeniable. We don't detach from this. We don't understate the importance of being compassionate and bearing witness and understanding this is an external reality. But my real understanding of what's going on at this point is that the collective that we share is this sense of I am, right? I've gotten pretty deep into like biblical interpretation of how this stuff works, not from a historical or parable tale, but these figures in the Bible, Old and New Testament, being psychological states that one moves through until the ultimate realization, which, they're described differently in each book. But in the New Testament, and as someone who grew up Jewish, this is not something that I grew up with, but it's known as awakening to yourself inside of your own skull as God. You're still you, but you're God. That's called Jesus Christ, right? That's the awakening to the consciousness that is going on. Now, what this does in terms of the us versus them paradigm, or external versus internal, or duality versus unity, is you start to see the world as still a valid thing. Your SJ, like I recognize people out there, but I also see it fundamentally as a projection of me. Not me, Noah, even though kinda, but me as God, right? And when you do that, you're constantly getting this feedback loop of where you need to be, because we all know the best version of ourselves. What you described as the most authentic is, we know what that is. Like, we can sense it. We might not have the clearest picture, the clarity of exactly what it looks like, but we know what it is in our minds. What you start doing with this stuff, this imaginal stuff, is you summon forth that version of yourself. And what it feels like often, I've been describing this to people, is it feels like you're dying. That part of you is literally just falling away and it's dying, and it can feel like actual death. It can also feel like you're gonna die, like you're gonna get hit by a car, plane is gonna crash, or whatever it is. And you're just dropping these versions of yourself so you can be the best version of yourself, because then you're much more effective for you, for what you're doing in the world, for the people around you. And as I see it, the reason this seems to be happening to a fair number of people who are waking up and then stabilizing it. A lot of people wake up and then they go back down because this world beats you back down. But that's in their own minds too. That's threshold guardians that they set up. But the reason this is happening is this has to happen, right? If we want this world to continue, and it will, because this is somewhat predetermined, but if we want this to not to be a living hell for everyone objectively, we have to be the best versions of ourselves. We have to be able to be non-reactive, thoughtful, wise, compassionate people to move into the reality of this world where it's like, all right, we're good for the next like few thousand years at least. Like, we got millions, maybe billions of years before the sun fizzles out in linear time. Like, we're good. Like, we have time if we get our shit together. So to me, it's really changed the dynamic of difficult external situations, because I recognize it as, truthfully, and not in like an egotistical or selfish way, but as something that's coming out or playing out, even if it's in my own head or outside, that is trying to get me to deal with this fundamental fact that this is my story. This is your story. Literally everything. We are co-dreaming this. The way I use the analogy is, when you dream at night and you're in a place and there's all these different people and like there's these faces, like you're like, how did I make up a unique face? Like, I don't know. How did I just imagine? Those are people. It's just like this world, but it's an undisciplined and unfocused imaginal act. Whereas it's a dream, it's just happening. You have to pull these things out and plug them into this world to make sense of them. But that's what this is too. Those people are real. They're leaves on the tree, but we're also the root of the tree, all of us. And when you wake up to it, it's just like, it's a weird switch that happens, that you stop seeing other people as things to hinder you, or even like on the reverse, like when you love something, you recognize it's because you love some aspect of yourself. And it's not like this weird selfish game you play. It can sound like that, but it really is like a recognition, a deep recognition that everyone is the same, and we're all doing this story game for ourselves. And the best way to prove it, again, like, is by using what you described. You find the thing you need, you identify an issue, and then you take the practical steps that those just naturally unfold. And a big part of this, I'll say, the last thing, is that you deny the world of your senses. Like, you basically, if you do something where you imagine a scenario where you're the best version of yourself, and then you open your eyes and you're not, because you perceive it with your senses, you don't feel it internally, you got to deny that shit. And it's a very tough thing, because it cuts against the rational and analytical mind. Doesn't like that. It's like, no, like, and that's not because they're dicks. It's because it's trying to protect you. It's like, this literally puts every fucking thing in your life on your plate, and it's all your responsibility. And the rational and logical mind's like, I already got enough shit to deal with. Like, please don't make me the creator of everything. But man, like, when it fucking happens, dude, and you fucking know you did it and know how you did it, is very powerful. And then again, like, to tie it into astrology, man, this is happening for everyone. You know what's going on in the end of the year. You know, this weird kind of miraculous divine timing. It's like so bugged out. But let's get back to the astrology stuff too, man. Like, what's going on in this lunar cycle? And of course,
Yeah.
respond to anything that piqued your interest.
Yeah, sure. I just want to say we can jump in because it relates to some of the bigger alignments coming up. But self-talk, and maybe this is another way of saying it. I've just found it to be so important, like taking full and total responsibility of what's happening in my brain, the images that I entertain, and the words that are running through my head. And that has to be cleaned up. I mean, there's actually, for me, there's just no excuse. Like, and it's a constant. It has to be a constant stream of basically what I would say is loving thoughts to myself and to everybody else.
Yes.
No excuses. And
no excuses.
Yeah, no excuses. I mean, because, or actually, it could just be I want to hurt. I want to feel hurt. If I want to feel hurt, sure, just don't even think about what's going on in my head and get angry and hate people and send hateful message to myself. But I don't want that. I want to feel happy, loving. I want to be as useful as possible to myself and others. And so that's really ground zero for me. Is between my ears, my internal vision of the future, of the past, of the present, all has to be very, 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 very clean. And so just to transition, I mean, the astrology over the next month, there's actually a week in late at the end of August and at the beginning of September, Mars is going to be what we call in the heart of the sun. And that's an old ancient astrological term, but it simply means that Mars and the sun will be in the same degree of the zodiac, or within 1 degree of each other. In the zodiac. So we won't be able to see Mars. Mars will be in the underworld. But when it gets so close to the sun, and it'll be, I think, about a week, I can get the specific time up, but it's I think August 30th to I think September 6th, something like this. It's a purification through fire. It's kind of a rechristening, a baptism for the next 2-year cycle of Mars. Mars is 2-year cycle, right, with the sun. But it's a really good opportunity to purify our actions and take actions. Really, I've seen this when this transit has happened for people in the past. They've done things like stand up to difficult people in their lives, make this big decisions that have been really difficult that they've needed to make to protect themselves. And so much of cleaning the inside, like cleaning what's in between the ears. Sometimes that does translate into communicating to other people, to saying no, to cleaning out maybe negative influence. Right?
It almost always does. If you do what you're saying, dude, that discipline is something I did not understand. I was averse to meditation. I mean, this stuff makes me meditate now. Dude, people don't understand that that's how you change. That's how you wake up. That's how you wake up. If your thoughts, what you're describing, if you have that clarity of what you want, and then combine it with these practices of pursuing desires and selecting that vision of reality in this world, because this shit is like almost foolproof. You have the sword and the chalice. I don't know what the fuck I got that from, but like essentially, like you have the mystical tools to then go forth and literally start affecting change in the world in a wonderful way, and in a way that's beneficial not only for the world out there, but your internal and everyone else's. Dude, man, this is powerful shit. Continue. Not to
no, that's fine. But I mean, this is there's an energetic opportunity here about from August 30th to about September 5th where this can open up for people, right? And so what actions have maybe you've been wanting to take? Do you need to take? Sometimes you don't even have to contemplate the astrology. I remember looking back at my chart and there were some big things that happened, choices I made that coincided with this transit, with this Mars getting purified by the sun. And so it's probably just unfolding in people's lives, whether they know it or not. But knowing that this window is open, maybe can give people confidence, can help them take that step and understand why, what is changing for them, why that might be happening, and then give them, the ability to say yes to that and step into it with courage and confidence. Mars is the planet of action. It's the planet. It can often be. I don't want to say violent, but there is that tension that comes with Mars. There is that pushing against other people, right? And so how we deal with anger, I think, could also come up. How we deal with difficult emotions. Can we sit with it? Can we be with Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, but can we
I'm
be
just
with?
taking my chart. Yeah, because this is what you're talking about. Mars is important. Continue. I just don't want you to
Yeah.
become distracted.
No, that's fine. No, please. But I mean, yeah, it's how can we be with difficult emotion? I think is one of the most important things for us to come to terms with. We're all triggered. I mean, every day I get triggered, and I got to take it out on someone. Am I going to kind of be with the energy and then engage in a way that's fair, healthy, and loving? You know, and it might be assertive even. But I'll tell you what the exact degree this is happening in the
And I'll
sky
and
is.
I'll tell you that Mars and the Sun are both in Cancer in my ninth house. Those Mercury and Leo in my ninth house. Dude, listen, it's funny because like I very rarely will pick dates for my imaginal acts, but I've been honing in on September 3rd
Okay.
really intently, and I don't know why. And now you're telling me like there's this period. I'm like, oh, okay. Now I gotta know why.
And that even gets even better because so the 30th through the 5th is when Mars will be in the heart of the sun. But this is actually a unique Mars purification year because on the 2nd and the 3rd, Mercury will be right there with Mars and the sun. And so I think I tweeted this out yesterday, but this will have an occult slant to it. And it's going to be in 10 degrees of Virgo.
Bruh.
Those three planets will be together, all being purified by the sun. The mercurial, which is the occult, the communicative, even the markets or business. But if we want to just keep it more about the internal dance, you know, this is a real powerful time. Yeah, to take action, with you know the unseen realms, maybe to communicate with things that yourself in these imaginal realms. But Mercury being there is highly special, and that's going to be on the 2nd at about, or the 3rd in the morning, actually, about 10 o'clock on the 3rd. But there's about a 24-hour window where Mars will be in that same 1 degree range with the sun.
What is the ninth house?
So yeah, the ninth house is the house of, you know, a lot of people say travel. I like to think about it as the house of religion is, I think, maybe the most common signification. So you might say religion or spirituality. It's the house of worship. It's where our beliefs about maybe the gods, our cosmology, our kind of metaphysical understanding. That's all in the ninth house.
What planet do planets rule houses? How does that work?
Yeah, so there's debates, and as an astrologer, when I speak about it, I'm very, very kind and deferential to others and their beliefs because I can't say one opinion is right or wrong. For me, I don't use.
What do you do though?
Yeah, for
you
me,
don't
yeah,
use houses.
I use houses. Actually, that's one of the most important things for my astrology is houses. Signs are less important. I think there's a lot of what I would call signology out there where for so many people, astrology is just about I'm a Taurus or, you know, everything's about the signs. And that's the main, they give like maybe 50%, 60, 70% of their astrological practice defaults to the significations of the signs. It's overweighted in my opinion. For me, I place much more heavy weight on the planets. The planets are the essential feature of my astrology. And I think I would hope for any astrology. And you look at ancient texts, I mean, the planets become the central feature. Those are
root.
It's the root. It's even the root of the significations of the signs because we assign planets to the 12 signs. And often, if you read ancient texts, like Aries means martial things. And so it's all filtered back through the planets. So for my astrology, planets take primacy, and then houses, if we're dealing with natal astrology and even mundane astrology, houses are very, very important. But just to say, yeah, the ninth house is, I'd say, religion. There is another ancient, I'm not sure what to call it. It's what's called the planetary joys, where certain houses are assigned to certain planets. So the sun, yeah, the sun is said to joy in the ninth house. That's where it celebrates its joy, and the moon, the moon joys in the third house, which is the house opposite. And so you have the house of maybe solar religious the solar religious feature, the masculine part of our religiosity, which might be more of how we build temples or organize societies around belief systems.
Yes.
Maybe more of a manifestation in the world, whereas the third house can be more feminine type, earthy,
Yes.
spirituality, earthy spirituality. But that spiritual feature of the ninth third house axis, I would say, is for me one of the most striking features.
And it's 9/3, right? September 3rd, 9/3.
Yeah, there we
So
go.
there's a lot of shit going on, man. I'm telling you, shit is getting weird. I think what happened for me, if I was going to explain kind of why everything just clicked, is I was describing this to someone. I haven't spoken about this yet, but for most of my life, I grew up with women, had my mom and my sister, and usually like a live-in babysitter for most of my life until I moved in with my dad when I was like 15. Have always been in relationships since the age of 15 with women for the most part. Just always came from the feminine aspects of myself, both not like effeminate in life, but mystically, spiritually drawn to the divine feminine, really embracing just kind of that energy. And I think what happened with this imaginal stuff is I got a dose of directed masculine energy, the thing that impregnates the thing that the feminine brings into the world. And for some reason, it has just balanced the parts of people for me that needed to be balanced for me to understand this shit. So when you're talking about like solar return and the ninth house and the joy, and I see Cancer or Mars and the sun are right there, like I'm just like, oh, I get it now. Like I really get this shit and understand like that if you use these as kind of, you can get something done. Like if you're like exercising or something and you want to push yourself to the limit, sometimes you can do it even when things aren't primed to do it. You just push yourself willpower and it works. But sometimes it's just effortless. Everything conspires to help you do it. And kind of getting in tune with that flow with this shit is just so fucking amazing, man.
Yeah, it's so amazing, and that's a key. I mean, that idea of being in flow, I've seen it over and over again, is being in flow. And then even big decisions and even telling people no in ways that might seem scary just is a natural flow. There's just a natural flow to that. The right moment emerges. Actually, maybe they ask you or bring it up first, and then the conversation is easier than one would think. And and this we go into this idea. I think there is an important role that fate plays in our lives. That some of this stuff just feels fated. And you talked about karma earlier. There's different levels of karma in the Hindu system. They have like some that are more inevitable, that are kind of not changeable, maybe that are more like there's just more energy from past lives to certain karma that's just much harder to break away from. But a lot of karma is in the realm of our ability to work with it in this life, according to their system. But sometimes these changes just feel so fated that there's nothing that can be added to something that's unfolding by worrying or stressing.
Never.
That's not going to help.
Never.
Yeah. And
never.
Yeah, so there's like nothing that can be done. It's just, this is what's going to happen. It's just, am I going to poison the well? Or the question is, how much will I poison the well with my fear, with my anxiety? And that's optional. That's optional.
Yes. And this is important. And I think when we start talking about fated or free will or destiny, people get tripped up a lot intellectually and conceptually. I think what this means is, again, going back to this idea that this is your story that you're writing. You can change any aspect of your future. But if you don't understand specifically how to do it and the consequences of doing that, you may just be fighting against yourself, right? And that's the important thing here. It's not that the trick I use for this stuff is when I tell people, if people are really like grokking this who they are shit, if I say God, if I say universe, if I say Buddha, if I say Krishna, if I say anything, divine feminine, divine masculine, and you think of anything outside of you, it hasn't clicked yet. It hasn't clicked yet. It's not that those things don't exist, but what we're doing there is we're pulling it from within ourselves, projecting it outward and saying, oh my God, I love that. And that's totally great. And it works and it's amazing. And we should use that stuff. But once you finally, when someone says God, and you go, oh, that's me. Not in like an egotistical, I'm going to fucking dominate and be a shithead type of way, but just you recognize that, man, you can just you're in the flow. You stay there if you want to, and you recognize that when we're talking about things that are fated, what I really think is fated for everyone when they really get it, and everyone I know is pretty much going to get this shit in this life, which is incredible, which is so people don't even understand how incredible it is. This is not a very common occurrence that so many people are getting this shit. But when people really get this, man, like you wake up and you fucking understand that this is how the world is, and you are constantly in control of your life. It seems like that's not true. The feedback we get from this world indicates that that is not the case, but it is true. And man, it's the most beautiful and wonderful thing, because you finally become the person that little, like, people know the conscience, the little voice in their head. Well, there's a version of you that's not just a little voice in your head, it's the full version, and you step into it. And that's literally what this stuff enables. And it's just a beautiful thing, man. It's just like, it's a trip to be alive in physical form when this shit is happening, because it's so cool. It's so
Yeah,
cool.
it's amazing. Yeah, and we're we're divine beings, and that's how I like. And I think that for me, at least for my version, uh, there's a huge divine part of ourselves, and it just goes back to what you're saying. It's inside. That's the access point. It's actually in my own generator of divinity
Yeah.
that I carry, and that everybody carries. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of ground zero for at least for me when I think about living well and tools for life. That's kind of a preliminary truth that has to be digested before really anything can unfold, before any flowing, let's say, really getting into the flow sustainably can emerge.
It
You know,
has to, right? Because if you're not, you're attributing. It's like if someone has a profound experience on a psychedelic or a plant medicine. If you attribute it to the plant medicine or the psychedelic, you'll forever be thinking that it's something outside of you. This is the same way that someone might go to church and hear about Jesus Christ and think that there's some dude who has to be the mediator between them and a person who was called Jesus Christ. It's you're putting it outside of yourself, which, what does your life then become? It becomes chaos. You don't understand what's going on. There's always something else in control. There's always some other aspect of reality that you can't understand or grasp. But if you just do it for like a month, flip it around in your head and see what happens, because then you start to understand, like, oh, I have like so much more control over this. And you don't micromanage. You're not like an OCD, let me plan out every second of every day consciously, but you go to the end result of what you want. The wish fulfilled is implied, and let it unfold. And when you keep walking into it over and over again, you're like, oh my God, like, this is it. This is actually how it works. So yeah, man, it's just like I said, as you were just speaking about what you said, church bells were ringing outside.
beautiful.
And I mean, it's just like, it's just, life is good. Life is good.
It's wonderful. You talk about the Jesus, I guess the red letters that have come down to us in the New Testament, as it's been presented to us in this lifetime, right? There's the one, knock and the door shall be open unto you, seek and ye shall find. I think that is just, I found that to be true. Just opening up my inside and saying, all right, I'm here to seek. What do and the answers do come. Answers do come. Okay, wow.
Have you heard of this?
I have not. Is there an author to it? Okay, Neville Goddard. No, I have not.
Okay, my friend.
1961, Neville Goddard. Okay.
So he was a 20th century mystic. This is the dude that popped me open. This is what specifically happened. So I did a podcast with Mitch Horowitz, and my friend Duncan Trussell, and it was like, yo, you should do a podcast with Mitch. He's in New York. So I went down there, and before I went down there, I listened to his book, The Miracle Club. And it's a really good book. Mitch is awesome. I really am forever in his debt, because he changed my life unknowingly, although he probably knew what he was doing at some level. And he talked about this dude, Neville Goddard. And he talked about a lot of people, and there's a lot about the New Thought movement, which turned into the New Age movement, which just basically says consciousness precedes materiality, which I'm very much on board with. So, but anyway, he mentioned this dude, Neville Goddard, and I was like, all right, this is interesting. He just spoke about him so reverently. I was like, there's something there. I want to go check it out. So I went on this thing called SoulSeek, old peer-to-peer file transfer thing from the early 2000s, and search for Neville Goddard. And miraculously, there was like 80 talks recorded from like, the 40s to the 70s. He died in 1972. And I download them all, and the audio quality is abysmal, dude. It's like painful to listen to it, like screeching and like all this stuff. but I was like, let me listen to it. Let me just hear it because his voice is pleasant. He's this dude from Barbados. He's got this wonderful accent. He's a white dude, but he's from Barbados, and it's just like it's really just a pleasant voice. But half of it is him talking about this imaginal stuff and like how this works, and then the other half is just this biblical stuff of these visions he's had, and it literally is shit like, I saw David, and David is Jesus, and it will happen to you. And I'm like, what the fuck? But I keep listening to it. I keep listening. So he recommends these techniques, and I start doing them. And so let's flash back to I'm going to see Mitch Horowitz in the city. I've been envisioning my son being born, my wife having a very smooth and fast birth. Our first kid took like 18 hours. So I'm in the city. I'm interviewing Mitch. I'm talking about all this stuff. And I get out of the podcast and I see my mom has texted me that my wife has gone into labor. And I knew as soon as I saw it, like, there's no way I'm making this. I'm in the city. This is 3 hours away. If I got on a train right now, I'm like, oh, I'm going to miss the birth. So of course the baby came in like 50 minutes. It was like the fastest thing. Like, it was crazy. So that was the first kind of like big thing that like clicked in, but there was a lot of other little things. But the one thing that I've always wanted in my life, and I'm very upfront about this now, is I wanted a recurring stream of revenue that I didn't actively have to work a lot of time for. So I've been a freelancer, so I have to exchange my time for money, and my hourly rate is actually pretty high for that stuff, but still I have to work for other people, and I don't want to do that. So I started imagining a specific scene that implied I had the money that I needed. Nothing else, not the way I was going to do it, not anything else, just this scene that implied I loaded up with sensory vividness and emotional resonance. That's it. And then shit started to happen, my friend, and money started rolling in primarily from YouTube. I was putting up these videos from Neville Goddard and cleaning up the audio, and Manly P. Hall, cleaning up the audio, all public domain stuff. And money started rolling in and rolling in and rolling in. And then I doubted it. Then it went down to zero. They demonetized the channel. Then I said, all the way, I'll show you the graph. It's the funniest thing in the world. But I saw it happen in real time, popped up. Your channel has been demonetized, goes down to zero. I go, my imagination is reality. This isn't accurate. I wouldn't do this to myself. I know what's going on. I'm testing myself. So I do research. There are people with hundreds of thousands of YouTube subscribers who it takes them 6 weeks on average to get their channel back. I did a few different things to get it, make it look good, because it was a real thing I was doing. One day it came back. Money started going back up. So then I was like, okay, what the fuck? Now I'm like, this is not a small deal. Like, this is not like, okay, well, you can get a few little things. I'm like, this is actually how it works. So again, going back to Neville Goddard, the reason I showed you that is he talks about how all of this stuff works. And I think if I would have read it before I had experienced it, I would have written it off as kind of just like another new age kind of interpretation of how this reality works. But if you use the techniques and prove them, and they're almost all from him, everything that I've done, truthfully.
Okay.
Holy shit, man. It's just the fucking craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. And you nailed the key thing. If you do it lovingly, if you discipline your mind, which is why meditation is so popular for people, I think the thing that people miss with meditation, though, is they get to this place where they're not thinking about things, or they're watching their thoughts. But for Westerners, and this is really important, this is like kind of the Christian Abrahamic religion stuff, which is predominantly what this country is, you need the directional, aspirational intention to cut through the state of like, what do I do now? Which is where most Westerners' minds start to settle in deep meditation. And they experience it as being uncomfortable or something wrong, which is inaccurate. It's a misinterpretation of being non-attached, or not, in the Buddhist idea of desire is going to create karmic stuff for you. That's not accurate. You should pursue your desires in those states and use these techniques, because even if it's not something that you need or you want, it'll drop off if it's not. But if you do it this way, it will happen. I mean, it's fucking undeniable. It's insane. But I highly recommend. I'm going to send you a shitload of PDFs and other things related to him, because I think this combined with your just broad understanding and penetrating understanding of astrology, but also more than that, like when we spoke the first time, like, dude, like you understand this shit at a very deep level. I speak to a lot of people. I've spoken to like 200 something people on this podcast, man. Like you are right fucking there. Like you're in tune with like what is happening right now, what is going to happen. And it's like wake up city time. And dude, like I'm excited for you because I know all of your dreams are about to come true and like your wildest dreams too. And it's just going to be so fucking cool, man. So I just wanted to see.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it, and a lot of them have come true. I feel
Yeah, of course.
I'm closest. I'm just I'm a happy clam. I'm a happy little baby,
So
man.
awesome.
Life's just I'm such a grateful human being, and I don't really know what else to say beyond every day I wake up and I start with gratitude, thoughts of gratitude. I mean, as soon as possible. Hopefully, my first thoughts are just are thank you for being alive, because it's just such a beautiful gift. Every moment, every moment.
Isn't it the best?
It's the best.
So,
I get to drink this tea. I mean, it tastes so good, and there's just loving people everywhere, and I get to contribute to that loving energy and help people and be helped. And
cool.
so, and we have this technology now, which is just so amazing, that I can share insights that I'm having with a whole community of people, and come talk to people like you, and we're living in a golden age in many, many, many ways.
It is.
For sure.
It is. People think that this is the Kali Yuga because they look out there and they see such calamity. And what we're seeing is an age of humanity crumbling, but not to the end result of apocalyptic doom. I mean, it is for that age, but it's a rebirth into a new one. I very much subscribe to Sri Yukteswar's viewpoint that this is the Dwapara Yuga, which is not an age of descending darkness over everything, but actually a slow awakening of a golden age, just like you said. And we use different tools in different ages, but that, just to be clear, so people understand what these yugas are, it's like 860,000 years or something. So like we're, I think, still at the earlier stages. So like we're good. Like if you wake up to this, like shit is good. And it is not this passive fucking thing where we say, oh, we're in a golden age. There's not horrible things happening. There's not bad shit happening. That is, I do not want that to be lost, because a lot of open-hearted people think when you're talking like this that you're just camel in the sanding it and you're putting your head in the sand and you don't want to pay attention. You bear witness to all that shit. We specifically bear witness so we know when we have the internal and external resources to affect change in this world, where to fucking start. Like, I mean, that is, don't think that this is some get off into Spaceville and, start manifesting cool cars and shit for yourself. If that's what you want, by all means, but like you bear witness to the world and understand what the fuck is going on too. But it is a golden age. It really is a golden age. It's hard to understand when people see it out there, but it is. Yeah, it's the best.
For sure. And suffering is real. The Buddhist, the first noble truth or whatever of Buddhism is that there's suffering. It's real. It exists, and it's part and parcel with the reality. And so I think that's it. That's just a fact. But pain. What is it? The saying, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. I know I just contradicted myself there, but I think the point is that we can acknowledge there is inevitable suffering, but how much do we contribute to it is the optional part. And yeah, meditation for me has been essential. I think I talked to you about that before, but without that practice, my ability to successfully navigate goes down, by a very significant factor. Let's say I'm 90% operating on a really high level. Meditation stops, I might be down into the 30s, maybe the 20s.
How do you meditate?
So I trained with Vipassana meditators about
Goenka style.
Not Goenka style. No, I trained with the Western Buddhist movement that came out of the 70s and 80s. These guys went to Burma and Thailand and India and came back.
Ajahn Chah, maybe?
Ajahn Chah is one of the key teachers in the tradition. Absolutely. But guys like Joseph Goldstein.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
I know these people. I worked with
Okay,
some
you
of
do.
them.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, I was at Spirit Rock and Insight Meditation Society for
Of course.
several
Of
retreats
course.
back in the early aughts, and then got involved in my local community in Texas. And then basically that for me was just intense training for several, a few years, going to many retreats. And then it settled into daily practice, and I don't really engage with them anymore as a collective, but I've retained the practice and it's
The
essential
practice is
to my
powerful.
functioning. And that's what they
Yeah.
told me. But by the way, this guy, Howard Cohn, you might know him. He was like, the purpose of these retreats is so you go home and have a practice for the rest of your life. And when he said that, and originally I was like a really excited new practitioner. I'm like, no, Howie, I'm going to be right with you the rest of my life doing retreats. But he was right. He was right. It's been more about that daily engagement than about joining like regular retreats for me.
It
I'd love to
is
do a retreat, but
Well, retreats are great, but again, going back to the idea of like a lot of people will go on a retreat and then attribute the retreat as the thing that made them feel that way rather than bringing it into their lives and recognizing your whole life is a retreat. It doesn't mean everything is going to be like sunny and pleasant, if you're going to a really nice place, but I mean, it can be, but it is. You have to. This is the age of the guru is dying. It will be dead in like 6 months. It's you. Anyone who thinks that they're going to be getting fishies from someone forever, like that's not how it works. You are going to be taught how to fish. You're going to fish for yourself. Then you're going to teach someone else. And that's literally how this stuff snowballs forward. I do think there's something really powerful with the Vipassana stuff. I find the idea of one-pointed concentration meditations as well, whether it's the breath or some other thing, to be incredibly powerful. I found with the imaginal acts, that's what it is. It's a short, compact scene. It's the object of your focus. It disciplines the mind to snap it back and get used to that. And that is kind of the key stabilizer for being able to summon forth like versions of reality that are good.
absolutely.
I will say this about the IMS, the Spirit Rock, a lot of the Western translations, and I worked with a lot of these people, and I don't want it to seem too antagonistic. I think there's a fundamental misapprehension of desire and understanding non-attachment as these teachers were trying to convey them in the West. And this goes for the Hindu and Vedic stuff as well in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And that is fucking people up. If people understood a lot of these teachers' personal foibles and issues, they would understand better why I'm saying that. And also the root of it is this aversion, which feels like a holy thing to do, towards desire. Desire has almost a negative connotation in this world because it seems like something that's like lusty or like negative or pursuing something, not to everyone, but towards a lot of people who gravitate towards these spiritual aspirational pursuits. When in fact, rather than thinking of it as by definition the left-hand path, which it may be, is recognizing that like if you start pursuing what you truly love, and like you can't fuck that up. And that is what the Buddhists legitimately refer to as the union of emptiness and bliss. That is how you summon forth versions of reality in Maya and Samsara. That's also how you recognize that Maya is nirvana, right? Or samsara is nirvana, right? Maya is samadhi. Like these things are really embedded within each other. And if you understand that, you can wake up here and it's not just use these practices as kind of like a mind stabilizer, but then directionally using yourself, your deepest self, to really fucking do this shit for real. It's been a major insight because I've been around the world behind the scenes and I've seen kind of the schisms between these practices and teachings and then how they're actually applied in the teachers' lives. And that's not me shitting on people. It's just trying to convey that recognize where the faults may be in some of these things. Obviously you doing it yourself. You know what the fuck is up.
Well, I've had some inside baseball with some of the Spirit Rock, more specifically than I am.
Yeah, okay, we can talk about that.
I know that for me, I kind of left being a little bit more attracted to like the Ajahn Chah tradition and some of the monasteries that have opened up in the West. That I felt they were more of a they solved the problem of how to integrate the business of spirituality.
Business of
Yeah,
spirituality.
and those monks that I can get you the names of the monasteries, but a lot of they have these monks teaching online. The monks are actually where it's at because they have whole systems in the Pali Canon for how to deal with the business of spirituality that have been developed over thousands of years, and they adhere to these precepts. And I think it makes it a lot easier as a means of transmission when you have these kind of ancient tried and true rule sets. Whereas Spirit Rock and IMS they're coming right in saying, all right, we got to make some money, and I think they're a little bit more focused on the modern business of spirituality. Look, they need to keep the doors open. They want to survive. They want to feed teachers. I'm not going to poo-poo that, but I think there can be problems that are just embedded at the more that the money becomes a motive. I think that the more problems you have, whereas the monks remove that. Yeah. And so anyhow, that's where I left it. But for me, it's the practice. It's the light that was turned on. I'm forever grateful to those sinners. And I'm so happy that it's like they lit something in me that has not gone away, hasn't been snuffed out. And, anyhow, so let me there's two other things about the astrology that I wanted to mention. Out of my mind. Okay. Yeah. Just for listeners, the big one is this purification of Mars and Mercury, but more rarely Mars, but now with Mercury. This Mercury purification happens about 6 times a year. They're very powerful moments. The Mars version happens about once every 2 years. Yeah. And together, I don't have those numbers. I need to research that and tweet about that. How often Mars, the Sun, and Mercury come together like this? Yeah, I imagine it's probably not very often. So
yeah.
I will find out. I need to send out a tweet on that. But so the other two big things that are happening is that this is actually a pretty good period because once we get to Libra season in September 20th and the last part of September, it's kind of going to re-trigger some of the difficult astrology of this summer because Mars will be, let me see when Mars enters Libra. Mars enters Libra October 4th. Okay, the Sun enters Libra around September 22nd. But once the planets start piling up in Libra, it's just a more difficult relationship to Saturn and Cancer. And that's what the summer meat grinder was about, a Mars-Saturn opposition. So starting October 4th, we're going to get a square with Mars and Saturn. And so I don't think it's going to be as intense, okay? But because it doesn't come with eclipses. But that will last for about 6 weeks, which is how long it usually takes Mars to go through a sign. So that's something I just want people to be aware that this is a good pocket of energy, one of the better pockets of energy through the end of the year. And then once we get to the end of the year and into January, there could be some real intensity returning because the eclipse season's coming back with an eclipse on Christmas, the day after Christmas.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, midnight. Yeah, midnight on the 26th. So it's actually the 25th into that 26th. And those are going to be, again, some challenging eclipses. You're not going to have Mars there messing it up, but Saturn and Pluto will be very close to each other. And a lot of astrologers are talking about the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. Just so people know, I work mainly with the 7 traditional planets. That's just my training, and I find that to just be more tangible for me because I can see them. And a lot of the ancient philosophies are built around them. But either way, Pluto or not in the mix, it's still a eclipse season with Saturn right in that eclipse axis, and that's going to be quite difficult. The other big thing is that both Saturn and Jupiter are now in direct motion by September. Jupiter just went direct as we've had this talk. So during this talk, Jupiter went direct. September 18th, Saturn stations direct. So it starts moving forward in the zodiac again. And I think that's going to just give energy to push, our collective narrative forward. Depending on people's natal charts, they might find that they're re-energized with things that have been stalled, might be ready to continue to unfold. But I imagine we're going to accelerate into some pretty interesting times later, Christmas and into January. So those are the only two other things I wanted to mention to folks. enjoy
Dude.
enjoy this month, enjoy Virgo season, enjoy this purification of the masculine energy, and figure out how healthy masculinity, maybe read some books on it, ask yourself what that means to you. What does it
Yeah.
mean to be an active force, an initiating force for the benefit of others, for your own benefit? How can we initiate? And that's why I love the masculinity. It's we all have a masculine and a feminine, but we all have to be initiators. We all have to take action in life, and that's how things get done. So how do we do that in a loving way? How do we do that with, like I was saying before, courage, nobility, right? These symbols are things, symbols to contemplate. What's the noble warrior as we go into this life, this game of life, or this sort of battlefield of life, the daily struggles, the vicissitudes. How do we handle that? How do we equip ourselves to enter that realm and take that action that's loving and that's useful? And we've talked about a lot of tools here. The meditation and many other things, but these are the things I would be contemplating, and especially as we get into the rest of the year. I think this period can get people equipped for the rest of the year, if they want to be.
That's, I think, the best summation of this is the time, as I sense it, to gather your tools and resources and understand yourself as the best you possibly can, because I do think as we move into 2020, just the stuff that we don't acknowledge and deal with internally is going to be outpictured into our reality in a very tangible way. And I think if you do understand that, you have the ability to, again, select a version of reality that's going to be aligned with you being in flow and feeling good. And just like I can tell when you're talking, you can tell when I'm talking. Like when someone's loving life, no one's tricking you on that. There's no like fucking fake me out switch on that shit. They're either loving it or they're not. And I genuinely know and believe everyone has the ability to love their life fully, wake up every day and be like, I just said to my wife, I was like, I fucking feel great. Like I can't remember where I had 3 months in a row and knowing that it's going to last and been through challenging shit. I don't want to make it seem like it's utopian externally, but I just feel fucking great. I know that's possible for everyone, and this is the time to kind of gather all of these tools together. And I love that you say the masculine shit, because I never understood it, man. I understood. I mean, I obviously at some point previously, but man, it clicked for me a few months ago, and man, it's a beautiful thing. It really is. SJ, this has been a pleasure. We'll figure out the next time to check back in, man. But I'm down to do these fucking whenever you want.
Cool. Yeah, we'll figure it out. And I think I like this. I like being able to just hit on some of the astrology, but then as kind of a segue into these other conversations about non-astrological matters, but just life matters, core life issues, core being issues, let's say,
Yeah,
because that's how it should be. The astrology is really just a way to support us in these kind of deeper, useful conversations about how to live well. So I appreciate that.
totally, man. And it just occurred to me, I can put these up on the MindPod Network YouTube channel, which now has like 13,000 subscribers, gained like 12,000 in the last month. So, imagination. I've been doing digital marketing for a long time. I have no explanation other than I imagined something. Like I've done really well and know what works. I cannot tell you the real reason this shit happened, but it's pretty cool, man. We should put these up there too. And we could also do some live things. Because I think I just know when shit is good, and it's good the people need to hear a lot of this stuff right now. And if people have questions, they can figure out how to hit us up, and we'll get back to them. I know Twitter is really good. What's your Twitter handle? So
My Twitter handle is SJAnderson144, and that's at SJAnderson144. And I'm hard at work right now. I'm hoping at some point next year I will be kind of launching my ability to take readings. And I do readings for friends, and I've done readings for a while now, but I haven't launched kind of a formal practice.
Any help, man? Any help you need? Yeah. Any help.
Yeah. I just want people to know that's in the works, and it will be, ready. And so it's something that when you have a read for people, it's a very serious thing. And so it can't be done lightly. And I've had to do a lot of preparation, take a lot of classes about counseling skills and how to hold space with people. But that's in the works. And a lot of people have been hitting me up And I imagine if more people start hearing me, there might be more people curious about that. But just know that will be available, and I look forward to just serving people and doing what I can to add value to their lives. So,
Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. All right, man.
all
This
right.
is great. Enjoy China. How's the future, by the way? How is today?
The future. Oh yeah, the future is wonderful, man. It's a beautiful, clear evening out, and I'm gonna get out and go hang out with a friend here now. So I'm just really having a wonderful day, and it's China's great, man. I all bad things aside that's said about China in the media, when you come here, great people, salt of the earth, really loving being here. So I've nothing bad to say about China at this point.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
I love to hear that. Amazing. All right, man. We'll
All
talk
right.
soon.
Great to see you. Peace.
Peace, dude.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to that episode. That music you just heard is a teaser of a remix I did. I guess it's not really a remix, it's a bootleg. I bootlegged it from a song called Diamond Veins. Whatever. I liked it. Made it cool. I like it. It was cool to begin with. Made it cool in my own way. That I don't know if it will ever see the light of day as an official release. Maybe I'll hit them up. Maybe someone knows them. What is the name of the group? I probably should have been prepared before I started recording this outro, but I'm gonna do it anyway. It is by a group called French 79. The song came out in 2016. The song is called Diamond Veins, featuring Sarah Rebecca. And I'm going to try to get rights to that because I like the remix of the things. There's a full version. Hit me up, noah@syncpodcast.com if you want it. I'll give it to you for free. Finishing it. There's a lot of music coming. There's a lot of good music coming. A lot of different types of music coming. So stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed this episode, go check out SJ on Twitter. He told you where to do it. There are links in this podcast. It's super easy to do. I'm going to release this either Monday or Tuesday, so the 12th or the 13th of August, 2019. So it's going to be close enough to the conversation where it's still impactful. That's it. Rate and review this podcast. That would be wonderful. I appreciate it. Sign up for the list, the imagination list, syncpodcast.com. Send me an email, noah@syncpodcast.com. Super easy. All easy stuff to fucking do. That's it. That's it for this week. Now, I keep saying this week. I'm used to doing a weekly. I'm now going to at least do 2 a week, maybe 3. So I'll just see. Until next time, happy imagining. How about we go with that? Happy imagining. Bye-bye.